God, dude, you just lobbed me the baseball. You're like Mike, just hit this one out of the park, and you moved the fence forward so I could actually get out of the park.
Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hassman, and joining me today is a repeat rock star, and a rock star in every sense of the word. He's a speaker. He's an entrepreneur. He's the author of Profit First, Get Different, Pumpkin Plan, Clockwork, and many more. And his latest book is All In. Mike Michaelowicz, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate you, man.
Kirby, we're becoming regulars. Like we basically, I know it's your show, but basically it's our show now. I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm back so. Thanks for having me.
100%. No, dude, you can come back anytime. I just told you that right before we started recording.
I know. Thank you.
So I want to dive in because, as I showed you right before, I have the latest book All In here. And you've written books on finance, so Profit First, marketing, Get Different. I kind of figure Pumpkin Plan a little bit is sort of that way. Systems, around systems of business is Clockwork, and more. Your latest book, of course, is All In, and it's about creating great teams. So my first question is why this topic and why now?
Yeah, so this book's really became evident when COVID hit. So before I was looking, so what I'm trying to do is build a compendium of tools for entrepreneurs, my books, on the different aspects, leadership to profitability. And admittedly, these are things I struggle with. So it's not like I'm a great leader. I'm a meh leader. I aspire to be great. So I start the research and I deploy and try to learn from my own businesses. So prior to COVID, I was learning this stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll try this at our company and try that, and stuff worked and stuff didn't. Well, what happened pre-COVID was employees, teams were asking, desirous of having, flex time and remote work. Post-COVID, it became an expectation. So desires have become expectations. Like if you don't offer that, you ain't getting me to work with you.
Right.
So things went kind of full speed or full throttle into the new kind of leadership environment. And it was evident, I got to get this book out. I modernized it, if you will, like some of the basic tenets and teachings, modernized it into our post-COVID work environment, these hybrid environments and so forth that's come about. And that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that you and I've talked separately about this, where it's like, I love that you have, Profit First is one of the books that I recommend more than any other business book on the earth. And so it's one that you just go, I look at the different areas of business and I see what you're doing, trying to build that. And I will say that every business I talked to in the last 2, 3, 4 years, we're struggling with the same thing. Right? Yeah. Hiring and building teams. And so for me, I think that this book fits well into that. So one of the first topics, and I have this both on audio and on hardcover, and I was fascinated by the concept of sort of creating a workshop to create great employees. And I was like, I'm like, duh. And so when I read it, that was fascinating to me. But can you talk about that idea and explain it a little bit and how that might work for a small business?
Yeah. So this concept of workshops reveals the most important ability or talent that people have that very few employers look for, and it's potential. Most of us look at experiential talent, like, what have you done in the past? That is a good indicator of the future, albeit sometimes you hire someone that has experience and you have to untrain them and retrain them in your way. So it actually can be costly. Some businesses, it's not enough to look at innate wiring. We use tools like Myers-Briggs or so forth to identify how someone's wired. But there's this big element, which is potential. What could this person do in the right environment that reveals the most about them? So the question, of course, is how do you find it? So I was like, how do you find potential? And there's a whole industry, a multi-billion, probably $1 trillion industry that does it so well. And it's the sports industry. So like, if you're going to play for a pro football team, they don't say, hey, show us your resume and tell us, do you also have to speak a second language? No, they say, let's get on the field and demonstrate what you have. Yeah. But more than saying we're looking for a player, demonstrate what you have, they run these camps. So even before they're necessarily looking to hire, they run these educational camps. So you can learn how to be a better football player, come to our camp. the coaches there are improving or helping everyone improve, but are also observing who's showing the most potential. So they get to cherry pick the folks. I'm like, my God, we can translate this to business.
Yeah.
Now, the quick story on the business front is, it wasn't my idea. There's already businesses doing it. This is not enough doing it. I found very quickly that Home Depot does this. So I don't know, Kirby, if you've ever done this, but I've gone to like one of these build a birdhouse workshops. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So what happens is they don't say they're recruiting. You're building a birdhouse. You're learning how to do new skills. Hopefully you fall in love with the store. That's what they want. And they're recruiting. They have an employee there that's observing, saying, what's the level of participation? Now, here's the magic. A players, if you will, the best people reveal themselves in the same 3 stages always for potential. First, curiosity. I'm interested. I'll show up. Second, desire. I want to do more of this. I have questions. I want to learn more. Thirst. I can't quit this. And so what they're looking for, people that start revealing desire and thirst. And if you show that, they're going to tap in the shoulder and say, hey, you're the perfect candidate to work here at Home Depot. We'd love to have you on board. And we can do this too. Don't say, hey, we're looking to hire someone and come through a workshop. Simply say, we're putting on an educational training on whatever you need to hire, but don't say that part, just educational. People with curiosity will show up. They're already demonstrating that they have the desire or the interest. Then, as they participate in your workshop, going through education, the people that are asking the most questions, that are participating the most, are showing inherently they have the desire, they have the want for this, and they're likely have the most potential. And those are the folks you should consider hiring.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned. So I have done those workshops, but I just had a grandson, and my daughter went. Thank you. They went to it, and I was like, they're recruiting. I didn't realize it at first, and then I read your book, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually really, really brilliant.
It's so brilliant. And here's the funny thing is that you can charge for this too. So your students show up, they're paying full fare, which is important because they're making a commitment to you.
Right.
Again, you're not saying you're hiring. So we had a preschool that was trying to find what's called site directors. They wanted to hire people that would go to multiple locations for this preschool and make sure they're meeting certain standards. And having teaching experience was important. They ran a workshop. What they said is, if you're already a teacher and have this experience, we'll teach you how to be a site director for where you're already employed. They reached out to their competitors, and their competitors paid for and sent their employees to go through this training. At the end of training, they saw that there was like 3 or 4 teachers of the whole class that were really exceptional and showed the most potential. They approached them and said, hey, we have an opportunity for a site director. If your current employer has that, of course you want to honor that and keep working with them. But if you're looking for something new, or if it's not available, we want you to know we have a spot. And they recruited 3 extraordinary people this way. The beauty is everyone elevated, everyone got better. They went back with new skills to their current employers. Maybe they got new jobs there. But this company was able to cherry pick the best talent from their competition and get paid for it.
That's
they
brilliant.
got the best 3. Yeah. So it's a really powerful strategy.
That is really interesting. So, the best small businesses, the best businesses really have team members and employees that really care. Like that's they almost act like an owner. So how can we create that sort of care in our own organizations?
My God, dude, you just lobbed me the baseball. You're like Mike, just hit this one out of the park, and you moved the fence forward so I could actually get out of the park. So I start off. It's in the book with a story that I think everyone can relate to, is with cars. And there's 2 experiences I talk about specifically. One is owning a car, and one is renting a car. Now let's talk about renting a car first. When you rent a car, you're given instructions on what you must do, and if you fail to meet those instructions, you'll be penalized. Turn it with a full tank of gas, or we're going to charge you this exorbitant amount. There better be no scratches or dents or dings. We're going to penalize you. Better be a clean interior, well, we're told what we must comply with. And the rule here is when we're forced to comply, we will seek to defy. It's human nature that when we're told to do something, we try to get back a little elbow room for ourselves. So I don't know when you rent a car. I actually rented a car this past week. What do? I'm trying to do donuts in the parking lot. When the light turns green, there's a Prius. Like, how fast can this Prius go? And they can actually do it pretty quick. I was surprised. So what we're doing with most of our employees is we're expecting compliance. We're like, here's what you got to do. And if you fail to do it, you won't get that promotion. You may not have a job here. Compliance results in defiance. So let's talk about the other scenario, which where we own a car. I own a pickup truck, and I care for that thing. I remember the day I bought it, I read through the entire manual. It was freezing cold, it was in the winter. I'm outside shaking for 2 hours, reading everything about this car. A rental car, I don't even know if they have manuals. I just, So the question, of course, is why would I treat one vehicle that way and another one not? And I said, well, I own one and the other one I rented. I don't own that pickup truck. It's actually owned by the bank. I'm making installments. They're the legal ownership. But I've achieved what's called psychological ownership. And as employers, we want our colleagues not to have legal ownership. That's not necessary, but psychological. There's 3 things, according to research from this guy named John Pierce back in the 1980s, that he identified result in psychological ownership. First is control. Control means I decide when I use it. I decide where I park it. It's available for me. It's under my authority. The rental car, they are asserting authority, saying you can't, you can't, you can't. My car, I say I can do what I want. When I feel ownership, control over it, I sense more ownership and actually care for it more. Yeah. The second part is intimate knowledge. I know everything about my car. I know the creaks and I know all the buttons because I spent time with that manual. I have intimate knowledge. And the third part is I invested myself, meaning there's personalization. I put a sticker on the back of the window. I program all the radio stations. I don't program the radio stations on a rental car. So if you allow your colleagues to have control, direction over their career, their path, you set, hey, here's what we're looking to achieve, but you determine how to get there. If you give them the ability to personalize, to give it their own flavor and flair, and if you give them intimate knowledge, training, and education, all those elements result in more and more sense of ownership, and they'll act like owners because they have psychological ownership.
That's interesting. That was one. So obviously you can tell the things that I picked out of the book because the things I wanted to kind of dig into.
It,
yeah. But one of the things I think that most of us are talking to do, and you said, you talked about, hey, post-COVID, culture was certainly a conversation before COVID, but man, now it's like, it's the leading thing that it feels like organizations are talking about is we want to build a better culture. So is there something that you see? I know you work with many organizations. Is there anything you see that organizations are missing, like low-hanging fruit, where we can start to figure it out to create that culture in a better way?
Oh, for sure. I mean, many things. The first thing I'll challenge is even using the word culture. I've used that forever. Culture, how it's been historically defined, is the implementers of it, the starters of the organization, the founders, say, this is who I am, and here's the values I have. I therefore expect the rest of the company, the people that join in, to share similar values. And that way we all complement each other. But here's actually the result. It brings about tunnel vision. It brings about this narrow perspective. And we actually end up looking for people who are just like us, get more of us. What I suggest businesses do is don't seek to build a culture, seek to build a community. Actually, diversity of opinion and experience. The town you live in and the town I live in are diverse by definition because there isn't an expectation that you must comply with certain standards. Just move into town, man. That's it. Well, what happens is those value sets kind of morph and it becomes a collective. And I actually have in one of my books, one of my values is no dicks allowed. It's people love hearing that. And basically I say life is too short to deal with a dick. Life's too short to be a dick. Like let's be dickless. If that, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. That was very awkward. You know what I'm saying. But I was talking to my team and we were talking about values and so forth. I said, one of the big values here is no dicks allowed. And a colleague here, Jenna, said, it's kind of bro-y. That's not who I am. And she's like, I understand what you're saying, but that's not who I am. And what came out of it was her spin and Kelsey's spin and Jeremy's spin. And we came up with this new term. We said, be the Ted Lasso, that popular TV show from a few years back.
Amazing.
Like the eternal optimist, be the Ted Lasso for our customers. And that became kind of the new definition. By allowing the community to form on its own, you'll find there's this kind of overarching, embracing value set or rule set, which isn't necessarily your own, and it's a much stronger company. So that's element number one. The other element is, and this was kind of the biggest epiphany on how to get people really engaged and how to build a community that's really all in. I used to think that you and I had to set a mission for our companies. We're going to achieve $10 million in revenue. I remember for one of my businesses, we're going to beat this big competitor. And I called all my colleagues in. This is businesses back and years back, but I called my colleagues in and said, this is the year we achieve 10 million. This is the year we take down Krull, our big competitor at the time. And the team wasn't excited. I'm like, do we need to play Eye of the Tiger? Like, why isn't everyone pumped up over the goal? And my assistant, her name was Patty, she came up to me and said, Mike, if we achieve those things, you get the bigger house, you get the new car. What about our personal visions? And I realized, my God, one person wants to buy their first house. One person wants to learn a new language. Someone's fighting a disease. Like, everyone has a vision for themselves. The corporate vision is usually centered around the owners or leaders of the organization of something that's important to them. Could be ego, could be other components, but something that resonates with us. That doesn't necessarily mean that it resonates with everyone else. And so to say, this is what we're achieving, it may be a stake in the ground, but why would people be compelled to march there? Instead of having a corporate vision, we need to have a collective vision. What is everyone looking to achieve here? Let's lock arms and let's march together and let's check these things off the list. When you embrace people's individual visions, they embrace the vision that you have too. And that's how the collective vision comes about.
Wow, that's really good. It reminds me, Dan Martell. I don't know if you've I know him, but
he's awesome.
But yeah, he's really good. And I heard him say the other day is that you need to create a vision big enough that your employees' visions can fit inside it. So in other words, they can chase their vision inside of the thing that you're trying to do.
That's a great way of phrasing it. Totally.
It ties with what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's a great way of phrasing it. And I agree with that. I want to add some elements. Putting equal significance in everyone's vision is absolutely critical. We found from our own deployments in our businesses and the businesses we've consulted. So the fact that my vision is, we'll say that $10 million target for this company, that may be considered, if I'm doing 1 million this year, that can be considered big. And one person's looking to learn piano, that could be considered small. But the reality is they are all equal. They're of significance to the individual. So what we have to identify is what is of significance to everybody and put them on equal footing and care for them equally. Because when someone learns to play piano here at the office and they can go to their daughter's recital and then join them on stage surprisingly with a piano, so that's going to be such a transformative moment in their life. I need to, as a leader of the organization, support that equally. One little caveat: this is not Make-A-Wish Foundation. I don't pay for the lessons. I just keep that vision in front of them. I remind them that I'm interested in that too. And as reciprocity works, they remind me they're interested in my vision as a result.
Yeah, boy, that's something that I really struggled with as I was a younger entrepreneur. I think I'm better and I still need to evolve on it. But I do find that and it's, by the way, one of the reasons I still like having an office is that I can go, and again, you can do this remotely, I'm sure, but I find I can walk around and go, okay, so you said you were working on a weight loss thing. How's that going?
Yeah.
Making it a point of checking in every day. That's something I've gotten a lot better at than used to be head down entrepreneur, got to, do this thing.
Crush it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it is a thing that has made, I think, our team better. So I totally buy with what you're saying there.
There's a lot to that physical component. We too have still a brick and mortar. People come in generally. Today's a Tuesday. We're recording Tuesdays and Thursdays. We usually have all hands here. Monday, Wednesday. We don't work Fridays, but Monday, Wednesday, people are working more remotely. What I find is that tactile experience. We as people are starving for that. I remember coming into the office once, and I came in a little bit late, and the team was together, just BSing, like not doing any work, whatever. And I walked in, and in the olden days, people would see me and go, start scrambling and get back to work. They looked over, hey, Mike, and they kept on talking. And I felt fulfilled. Fulfilled. Because I used to say, it's all about the grind. Now I'm like, it's all about the connection. Yeah. And if my colleagues feel comfortable talking about elements of their lives together and including me or not, but if we feel comfortable at that level, that connection will support a much more cohesive team in the long term. So that kind of that mentality, just grind it out, I think maybe it has time and place in the old days. Nowadays, it's about connection. How we as leaders can bring about connection, because the work will still get done, and it may be done at home at midnight now at the choice of our colleagues, but we need to facilitate that connection. Without it, communication just doesn't flow. Working together just doesn't flow like it does when you do have it.
Yeah. That's great advice. Well, Mike, thank you so much. I know you're busy. Thanks for taking the time. As you know, we've got All In behind him. We got All In front of me.
All in everywhere. I'm all in.
All In everywhere. Where can folks find out a little bit more about you, Mike?
The best place, the old classic website of Mike Motorbike, as in the motorcycle, MikeMotorbike.com. No one can spell my last name. So. But All In is up there. All my other books, you can get free chapters from it. I wrote for the Wall Street Journal for a couple of years. All those articles are there for free. Plus other content. So Mike Motorbike.
Mike, thanks so much. Again, as always, anytime you're willing to come back, I'd love to have you. So thank you so much.
Hey, it's our show now. It's our show, so I have to.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks, Kirby.
All right, man. That's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I'll see you next time.